I want to, first of all, welcome everybody to our session, Revenue Models Disrupted, Tech Strategies to Support Your Biggest Challenges and Opportunities. My name is Beth Bronder. I am the VP of Development and Partnerships here at ACCE. The folks on the line from Acrosoft are great partners of ours, and we're thrilled to have them here today to anchor this session and give you all some good information. I also have my colleague Anissa Starnes on this call. Many of you may know her. We are here if you have any questions. And just a couple of things I want to say is this conversation will be recorded. This session will be posted with the other sessions and also posted in the Acrosoft booth if you would want to replay this or share it within your network or your chamber. We've got a number of people here today from Acrosoft and their partners from the Charlotte Regional Alliance. And I think probably the best way for me to kick this off is to let them kick it off. So with that said, as people are still joining, Kayla Collier, who is the marketing manager at Acrosoft, is going to kick us off and also do the introductions from her side. So Kayla, why don't you take it away and we can get things started.
Thank you, Beth, so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm really looking forward to moderating today's presentation. It's great to have you all joining us from all over the country. So we're here today in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. It's great to be around other people.
It's boring.
It's boring, but
it's good to have you guys in the building. It's good to have anybody in this building right now.
It's good to be with other people, actually.
Absolutely. We're really excited if you can't tell. So just to give you a little brief background about the Alliance, it's an organization that was formed from the merger of the Charlotte Chamber and the Charlotte Regional Partnership. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our speakers today. So Joe Hager is the Senior Vice President at Acrosoft. He joined the company in 2013. He spent the last 3 years as the Senior Vice President, overseeing the launch of new technology applications. Joe's educational background is in microeconomics and finance, but he started his professional career in technology. He has spent his career consulting more than 300 chambers, economic developments, real estate associations, and other nonprofits on technology and communication strategies. Kris Kellogg, Chief Revenue Officer at the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, also joins us today. From working 13 years in telecom leadership, 10 years as an owner in a commercial real estate firm, and now as a Chief Revenue Officer, he is a serial entrepreneur who is an expert in revenue management. So before we get started, we just want to have a few housekeeping items to discuss with you. Today's presentation is going to be broken up in 2 different sections. The first is the guided portions with slides from Kris and Joe, and then we'll move to a fireside chat where Kris and Joe will be answering questions. One thing that is very important to our team today during this presentation is making sure that we answer those questions that you have about revenue models and technology to support your chamber. Joe and Kris have had some really, really great conversations with chambers across the country about their needs and concerns that they're facing, especially during and navigating through COVID-19. These conversations help our team curate some questions that we are really excited to answer during this discussion portion on the presentation. But more importantly, Joe and Kris want to answer your pressing questions. During any time through this presentation, please submit your questions in the chat to myself, Kayla Collier, so I can ask them to Joe and Kris. The best way to do this is by privately sending them through the chat on Zoom, just to ensure that the submitted questions don't disrupt anyone with notifications. And last but not least, today's presentation will also include 2 poll questions. So Beth is going to help me over here, and we are going to display our first poll question. And we want to give you some time to be able to answer that as well to kind of kick off our presentation. And perfect, thank you, Beth. Okay, so as you can see, the first question is, what is your greatest challenge at the chamber today? Is it revenue generation, inability to gather or have in-person meetings, events, connectivity to staff, or losing touch with chamber stakeholders, members, investors, and the community? So thank you all for answering. We're seeing that come in right now. And it looks like leading in polls is revenue generation. That's what we're seeing right now. We'll still allow people to get in and vote. So Kris, What's your perspective on this?
I mean, I think that poll says it all. Clearly, I'm the revenue guy, so I kind of felt like that would be the number one answer. But I think the key is that all those things are sort of woven into fundraising. But whether you're a chamber, an EDO, or whoever's on the line, we're all sort of looking down the same end of the barrel right now. And sustainability around our revenue model is probably what's top of mind for most of us.
Definitely. Now, I think, so we're looking at the results. I think we should probably show it to everybody else.
Absolutely.
So Beth, would you mind just closing out that poll and sharing it with everybody for us?
Yep. There we go.
All right. Yeah. So 58%
Mm-hmm.
at revenue, which is
Yeah.
something we kind of expected, right? 0% at connectivity to staff. That's actually pretty surprising.
Not that they don't love them.
I know.
It's just not top of mind right now.
Perfect. All right, Beth, thank you so much.
Okay, Chris, so definitely looks like you're onto something here with revenue generation. So let's discuss this a little bit more.
And
So-
give me 1 second, guys.
Yeah, let's clear that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
We expected some technical issues today. Okay, you got it. I just need to remove that. Okay. Still sharing my screen. All right. Beth, can you confirm that you're still seeing our slides? We're getting some,
Good.
No, I'm seeing your screen, not your, I'm seeing you, not your screen.
okay. Surprise.
While Joe's putting up that slide, and it's really about kind of things we're learning from COVID and the environment right now. And again, this fundraising environment is difficult enough.
Good, Joe.
Can you hear us? Can you see it?
Okay.
Woo,
Are we back?
we're back.
There you go.
All right. We're operating like 6 computers in here, and it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, it's just, I was going to say that specific to COVID, it's already a difficult environment. And I think there's probably 2 things we've learned. One is that if there are flaws in your business model or in the revenue model, that COVID is accentuating those, it's exposing those flaws. So if there's some things that just are declining in relevance or declining in revenue, they're going to be more prominent and it's going to be more obvious. On a more positive note, I would say that if you've been making changes to your revenue model during COVID or you've already started, it gives you the opportunity to accelerate that model. And that can be a good thing. You probably got a little relief maybe from your board or from stakeholders to take some chances and do some different things. So if you want to look at it in a positive light, COVID really gives us the opportunity to sort of, accelerate that model, Joe. And technology is a piece of it. I mean, we're going to have less staff. We already do, unfortunately. We're going to talk more about that, less resources, and we're going to have more automation.
Definitely. Yeah, technology is a big part of this. That's why I'm here today. Obviously, I think we've gathered that, but it all comes back to revenue, right, at the end of the day. So I'm going to switch on to the next slide here, and we'll talk a little bit about revenue.
Well, and it's not just revenue, but it's how we connect revenue to the mission. And again, all our organizations are a little different. You see one chamber, but I think at the end of the day, you have to be really clear about the value proposition. You can't just continue to pile on more and more stuff with less people. So in some cases, that means walking away from some of your sacred cows, some of the programs you just need to part ways with, and reinvest those resources, the money and time into the new investments, the things that are going to carry you into the future. And you need to be thinking about what you look like 6 to 12 months from now, and how are you going to sort of pivot and take those resources and engage with stakeholders and investors in a different way. And it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to have to walk away from some things to be able to reinvest in some new areas.
Definitely. And Chris and I really want to discuss solutions to these big challenges today. That's our goal for this meeting, this webinar. We've really been pulling around the community for the last few weeks and hoping to get a lot of questions from everybody in the room here. But for the most part, in these pollings and asking around the community, 90% of the questions that we're getting, or the issues, can be put into 4 main buckets, right? The first bucket is relationships. So how do you maintain and grow relationships with investors and members right now during this time? The second is adjusting your strategies for events. So are they virtual now? Are you getting revenue from them? What are you doing during COVID or during these times to advance that? Then it's all about scale. So chambers at scale, right? How are you engaging with the community, including your members, but also the community at large, so non-members? And, Chris, those are really the chamber points here. I'm here for the technology, which is a big one, point number 4, but I'm sure you have some.
And we're getting there. I would just add that for us, it's top 3. It's shoring up our revenue from our top investors. We've got to retain every possible dollar that we can this year so the model isn't capsized and we can just kind of keep things on the rails. Using technology for outreach is a part of that. We're doing far less events. Everybody is. We're doing virtually. They're different. In some cases, they're not as good, but it's a different way of approaching engagement. But our shareholder base, our stakeholders, that group is even bigger, right? It's small, medium-sized businesses that want attention. It's our investors. It's a more broad section of our business community. But I think the thing that I would really key on would be the scale. You're all working super hard in this environment, maybe even harder because you're not distracted at home and you're working twice as hard. You've got to communicate that message outwardly to a broader audience because these people are going to come back and they're going to vote with their dollars. And the more relevant our message is and the more we're able to get that out, the better off we're going to be, when this thing returns.
Definitely. And, I'm going to try to relate all these first 3 points here back to technology because technology is a huge discussion point right now. I mean, obviously we're sitting here virtually, we're on a Zoom. This is something that is really unprecedented. We're all working our way through it. And technology is a huge piece. Your website, your data, how you're managing it, CRMs, everything you can think of. We're going to try to touch on that today.
Yeah. Especially around engagement, events like this, it's not going away. It's the integration of the virtual piece with the physical in-place engagement. I think that's going to be the new future, right?
Exactly.
But for us, it's all about the taking all the data and integrating it. So if you've got a website partner and you've got an app and you've got people running around with spreadsheets everywhere and a separate CRM, that's really dangerous. We've gotten to the point where I'm not the tech guy at all, but I do know that I have to be able to get good information and I have to convert that to a customer. And the only way that we can do that is through a technology partnership. And I wouldn't be here if we didn't have a great relationship with Microsoft, but they have converted our information to investment. I mean, that's essentially what they've done for us. And I think integrating that technology, this is the time to be doing it if you're not already.
Definitely. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for going through that. So right now, I'd just like to take a moment. If anyone would like to send in some questions, we can kind of get that queued up for Joe and Chris to answer. But like Joe has mentioned, him and Chris have been curating questions, that have been given to them over the past couple of weeks. A lot of pressing questions. So we want to just dive into that in a moment, but I'll give everyone just another moment or two to send in questions. So while we're doing that, why don't we go ahead, Beth, with the next poll. That can kind of kick off our fireside chat. Awesome. All right, so the next poll that we're gonna dig into, as you can see, what do you believe is the best possible idea to grow your revenue over the next 5 years? Event revenue, incremental investments for members, new investors, or starting/growing a foundation?
Wow. Well, I know we're going to show the results. Foundation really leading the way there.
Yeah.
We started a C3 foundation about a year ago, and certainly all these are really critical to growing investment, but at least for us, the foundation has been, we believe kind of one of those unsung heroes of future revenue, and we're very focused on that piece right now.
Yeah. I mean, my guess was going to be the current investors, current members, and pretty surprising.
Yeah.
All right. So Beth, should we go ahead and close that out and show everybody the results here and maybe talk about it for a couple minutes? All right. Yeah. So 12% event revenue, which for me, that's surprising, right? That's a big discussion point, but 12% is pretty low. Incremental investment from members at 31%. New investors at 25%, and then starting and growing a foundation leading the charge.
Yeah.
So
That's
wow.
that's interesting stuff.
Unexpected.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So let's dive into our fireside chat. I know everyone's really excited to hear these questions. So let's see, is that still there? Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and unshare this, and we're going to just go video, guys.
Let's do it live.
Perfect.
All right.
There's all the faces.
Yeah. So now we can see like 100 faces on the screen, which is kind of interesting. But just to confirm, Beth, you're seeing just our video right now?
We're seeing just you.
Okay.
Three of you.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and dive in. Hopefully we've got some questions at this point.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the first question is for Kris. Revenue is obviously way off this year. How are you putting together a strategy for 2021 and beyond? And would you be willing to share some of what's working?
Yeah, well, some of it starts a long time ago. We haven't thrown out the baby with the bathwater, but I think we've had some good things that have started. We've got more going on. What's been fundamental for us is focusing very narrowly on our value proposition. And that means ensuring that, all whether it's engagement, events, revenue, staffing, it's all sort of correlates back to our mission. And that means getting rid of a lot of stuff that was dwindling. Those things that are maybe not as relevant now as they used to be, but whether it's volunteers or your board or your staff, they don't want to get rid of them. You got to get rid of them. If it's not purely based on your, the fundamental piece of your mission, you're just not going to have enough resources to spread it around. And for us, that meant walking away from some really big hallmarks of our organization. We had a campaign. Joe, you've been a part of that for a long time. 21 years, represented 60% of our revenue. And thank God we started this. I dismantled it about a year and a half ago. Way too transactional, not sustainable, engages way too many volunteers. They've got a day job. So we eliminated that and we're able to sustain 95% of the revenue without having it. We walked away from the $500 general member level, which has again been the foundation for our organization for 100 years. And I think those are two really critical changes for us. But in general, you just have to be willing to make those changes to sort of reinvest in the future. And the event thing, which came up a little bit before, you're not going to be doing as many events. So if you're like us and you relied on 50% of your revenue coming in from sponsorships, that horse has left the barn.
Absolutely. So yes, talking about scaling, that's a great segue into our next question. So what are some ways to communicate to or engage the broader business community during the crisis? And what's the strategy around monetizing that?
So two different questions there. And I would say, first and foremost, this might be the most important thing, the way we look at it. It is super hard to monetize a virtual experience. People have Zoom fatigue. You guys paid for this call, so you're showing up. That's great. But, you probably get invites to 7 different things a day, and most people don't want to pay for them. So I think monetizing the virtual experience is tough. I do know that if you're on this call, you're working as hard as you ever have. You have to make sure that the work that you're doing at your organization is being communicated to the broader business audience. If you're doing the work and you're not getting credit for it, people are keeping score. And your relevancy as an organization is based on your ability to communicate that. And I'm going to give you just 3 examples, maybe of things that we're doing that I think are working pretty well. Our website that Microsoft helped develop has a section called Charlotte Business United. And it's a repository for all things sort of COVID environment, whether it's grant applications and assistance, government stuff, it's awesome webinars, emails, incredible speakers, podcasts, whatever it is. That's a source for us to gather information, prospects, different folks that are coming into the website. And even if I can't charge them, I can take something even more valuable than their money. I can get their information, right? This is the time to compile this information because there will be a day in the not too distant future when we're able to go convert it to revenue. We've also done some podcasts. We're up to about 2,500 views or listens, over 25 podcasts around issues around top employers in the region, supply chain disruption, small, medium-sized business challenges, anything you can think of that's sort of related to this environment. We're bringing in expert speakers from around the region to talk about those things, and people are listening. They're hearing what we're doing. The other thing is video testimonials. We're asking our volunteers, our executive volunteers and our board to do videos that are testimonials that allow them to approach their peers in the business community and to let them see the value of what we do as an organization through their eyes. And that's very different from our staff self-promoting, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity to utilize and engage your executive volunteers around value creation.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect lead into the technology side and really monetizing with everything that you're saying. It does always come back to the data, right? So the same way that a lot of these tech companies these days, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, their product isn't their platform. Their product is the data, right? So making sure that if you're doing these Zoom meetings, if you're running events and you're not collecting revenue from them, you can find a way to curate that data. You can organize it, keep it in, out of 100 different spreadsheets, keep it in a centralized area that you can use and really leverage in the future. So business intelligence. Now, it doesn't matter what software, what system you're using. Systems out there just allow you to really organize yourselves internally. Now, another piece of this is obviously the website, as you mentioned, making sure that you're keeping up with your content. So if you're creating these testimonials, put them on the website. I think that's obvious, but some people don't think about that, right? There's also email and email marketing, automation. So sending all these things out to the community at large, building that reach is a good way to monetize in the future.
That's perfect, Joe. So that's a great segue in to this question for you. So do you think it is important for a chamber to be concerned about updating their website right now, design or anything else?
So I think you're asking the tech guy in the room. Personally, I mean, I'm a little bit skewed in my opinion on this. I think websites and design are really important. Obviously with COVID, budgets are tight. Chris and I have had conversations. You can do things other than redesigning your site or working on the design aspects, right? There's free methods that you should all be thinking about. It's, your user experience. That's one thing. User experience on the website specifically can be optimized using your navigation, right? So if you're in there on your website, you're in the back end of whatever system you're using, or if you're in Microsoft Freedom, going in, thinking through the workflow, thinking through that user map, right? Adjusting your menus, maybe you have a utility navigation, main navigation, footer navigation, working through what that looks like. It's a perfect time to optimize. Also working on your general content. Everybody has access to their content, right? You don't have to pay for it. It's being hosted somewhere. So if you have stale or outdated content, just work on it. Use some time, even if it's some after hours work, it's definitely worth it. Yeah. So those couple of things that I would suggest. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to go back to one of the challenges that Joe, you discussed earlier. And this question is for Chris, focused on relationships. So during this time, Chris, what's your recommendation on outreach? Is it best to spend staff time on prospecting or with current members and investors?
Both, if you can do it. But I think that it's tough to generate new revenue from prospects right now, right? So it's going to come if we do all the things right along the way. But for us, it's 100% engaging our top investors. It's retaining every possible dollar, deepening and broadening the relationships we've got with the people that are most loyal to us, to our base, and deploying our human capital. There's people that are on our staff still that can have as much face-to-face or virtual time as possible. And on the prospecting side, we've actually gone ahead and we've looked through the region to try to profile those prospects we think are the most ideal for our organization, those folks that benefit most from the work we do. We've segmented that into an audience of prospects, and we've given it to our board and to our executive volunteers, and we've said, call them, reach out, set up a meeting, open a door for us. That's the new model for us for next year, is getting less folks at the bottom, probably more investment at the top, but having that peer-to-peer engagement from our executives, that's really critical. I think that's ultimately, Joe, going to require a lot of data.
Exactly.
And tracking.
Yeah, and there's ways to automate those touch points with people as well. So thinking through systems that you can create automated touch points, sending out automated emails, drip campaigns, whatever systems you're using, setting that up now and preparing for the future. And then, of course, understanding that if you're trying to develop these relationships, it's great, but you need to track that. So put it into a system. If you have a CRM, put it in the CRM. It's painful sometimes, right? You have to log in, you have to go and type something in. There's ways to work on that and make it easier, of course. But just making sure it's somewhere. Don't let it fall into a black hole of somebody's email, because we don't know who's going to be here tomorrow. Right? So don't let little fiefdoms happen with staff. Don't let data get siloed in 20 different systems or 20 spreadsheets out in left field somewhere, right?
All that proprietary information leaves when that employee does.
Exactly.
That's a really big deal.
That's scary. Yeah. Exactly.
Perfect. Okay. So, Joe, what are some ways that chambers can use more automation since they're operating with less staff?
So I would say, with automation, It's really a question that varies, and it depends specifically on what softwares you're using. For us, anybody who's using Acrosoft, it's drip campaigns or using our email marketing with automating the campaigns, or it's setting a schedule, using content like news articles that you're posting and sending those out regularly. But that can be done in any system, right? You can use whatever system you have in place today. Typically, if you're using email marketing, you can create those types of structures. You just have to think through the process. Now, if you're looking for some solutions out there that are quickly, if you're able to deploy them quickly, looking at a HubSpot for drip campaigns. But if you're looking for a low tech or free solution, look at your calendar. I mean, you can literally use Google Calendar today, setting reminders. You can have pop-ups for you, to-dos, and you can tie those to email templates that are in place. You can do mail merges. So you can still do the low tech aspect of that, or the free aspect of it. But obviously it's going to be easier if you start to leverage some technology. So I went a little deeper there.
No, that's great. So Kris, tell us about what your technology partnership has been like with Acrosoft, and what do you like about having your website and membership system all linked together?
We talked a bit about not being able to monetize, but capturing data. And really, again, not at the risk of sounding like a commercial, I mean, the biggest thing for us is integrating all the data at one point. And we've got a lot of people coming into our website right now to get information regarding COVID and other business best practices. We've got to be able to capture that, and we've got to be able to convert it to future customers and to revenue. That's really key. And I think for us, this stuff isn't cheap, and they've helped us develop an app. Microsoft has done that. We've unified all this data with the technology. And honestly, for our leadership, being able to go ahead and get solid reporting that's accurate, real time, have our staff be able to quickly and easily get information for customers. I mean, that comes from we couldn't do it in-house. We need a partner that can be with us side by side and go through that. And I think that's why this has worked.
Thanks, Kris.
That's awesome. Okay, so we have a question that just came in. So Kris, I think you can speak on this with the foundation. So with the increase of foundations and 501c3s being created, in what areas are you seeing being funded the most?
I mean, I think foundations certainly is a big piece of it. I think that as long as it's closely tied to the C6 and you've got some unification of your mission, there are alternative dollars that are out there. So I think that's a big piece of it. For us anyway, it's a shift away from heavy sponsorship in events. I mean, that's unfortunately something we relied on really heavily. And I think for us, being able to make that shift into new streams of revenue, even if we have to be a little smaller before we're larger, I think is probably critical.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to go back to you one more time, Kris, because this is a little bit of a sensitive subject to talk about. So if you are comfortable, can you talk about layoffs and furloughs, and do you expect to return to the previous levels that the Alliance is at, over the next 12 months?
So yeah, this is a tough topic. Anybody who is on this call, I'm sure, has had to think about some furloughs or has let folks go, and that's not an easy decision. I guess for us, we've gone from probably 40-ish employees down to about 30, so maybe a 20 to 25% reduction. We took a 10% pay cut, starting with the C-suite and moving into everybody else several months ago. So we're trying to capture some of those dollars to redeploy them into areas where we feel like there's a future around economic development and advocacy for us. But I think the most important thing I would share is that you don't consider this a subtraction exercise. This isn't about doing all the same stuff you did before with less people. You have to make these cuts. You have to make them fast. You have to make them hard. Do not wait. And you've got to whiteboard it. You've got to start from scratch. And don't think of, again, subtracting people off your staff. Start with zero. And as you sort of formulate your engagement and your programming and your revenue needs around your mission, around that value proposition, that's when you add people back in. And I think that's the way you have to do it, is build it from the bottom up and not start from the top down. And I think that's really kind of a key point. The other thing is, from a technology standpoint, there's no replacing human capital, but we're going to have to find ways to better adapt our AR and our billing cycles and those types of activities, as well as improve the way that our sales reps talk to people. And that has to be done through technology, because we just don't have enough people to do the outreach.
Definitely. And Kris, you definitely said it right. You can't replace people. So I in no way want to say that with technology, but technology can definitely help. It can help with the automation. It can increase productivity, like you said. So, that's a big thing. I won't say any more there, but, there's definitely a place in this realm for technology.
Awesome. There's a clarification question about what's the name of the program we were mentioning. So Joe, could you talk briefly about Acrosoft Freedom?
Oh, yes. Maybe I should have done that earlier, but so Acrosoft, I'm with Acrosoft. We're a software company. We have two sides of what we do. So we actually build websites for over 100 chambers around the community. We also have a software system to manage the websites. That also includes marketing and CRM functionality, membership, and finance. So it's a suite. We actually built it originally with the Alliance, which gives us that unique partnership that Kris has alluded to. We've since spread it out to other chambers around the country.
Yeah, and many of you use Salesforce, you use SAP, you've got a million different technology forms. I'll just tell you, and this is the quick plug, we looked at all of it and we've used a lot of them and they're super expensive. It's a huge commitment, whatever you do. What we liked about Freedom for us after we kind of interviewed all the vendors was that you could customize it. So I didn't need everything that Salesforce had, but I needed to do some things very uniquely and differently that fit our business model. And we've been able to sort of co-develop that off-the-shelf product and be able to design it around our needs. And that's kind of the reason we selected Acrosoft.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about event management right now. So we're going to take this question. So how are you pivoting your events for small businesses, less than 10 employee members, and keeping them engaged?
Good question. So if you guys are like, how long do we have? If you guys are like us at the Alliance, you've tried everything, like every aspect of trying to engage large companies to small solopreneurs, you tried it all. That's dangerous. I think you have to some extent, Kayla, kind of walk away from the portions of business that are maybe not quite as much of a fit anymore. And it gets back to your value proposition. And for us, we looked at two or three things. We looked at where are the gaps in the business community in terms of the needs that we can uniquely fill that aren't overlapped with community colleges or other corporations or nonprofits. Where's our unique space? And also step up to the fact that we're the best convener in town. I mean, that's sort of our hallmark of our organization. So be really, really good at that. Find those unique elements of the business that you're best in class at and part ways with the other things, because you're not going to be able to continue to be best in class in those if you're doing a million other things. And that's a hard step to take.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you guys for all these questions. These are great.
I want to throw in one. I just
Yes.
saw one come in. I
Yes.
think
Okay,
would
cool.
be good for you to answer, Kris. So this one, and sorry to steal your thunder here. What % of your revenue comes from events and what % is dues? That's pretty straightforward, but.
Yeah. So if that's a real-time question versus 6 months ago, it shifted,
Typically.
right? So we used to do about 40 to 50% of our business on event sponsorship revenue. And that number is, it's like 10% this year, right? It's way, way off. So we've gone out to our top investors and asked them if they're okay with shifting towards our mission focus, which is really their dues. That's where their dues monies go. And they're good with it. And they're helping us sort of convey that message to the rest of the community. But when we do events, we do them as smart as we can. And just to give you a couple quick examples, we'll have our top investors that we engage in a very small, meaningful, sort of intimate way, where we'll do Java with Janet. Janet's our CEO, Janet Labar. And we'll put 8 or 10 companies on a Zoom call or do breakouts in ways that they can talk to one another and network. They absolutely love it. They think that's super cool. And we find other innovative ways to use the technology around engagement. But for us, it's a shift from heavy engagement and sponsorship model more to dues and to what we believe will be the foundation.
Got it. And so just to chime in here on the technology side, I wanted to pose this question to you, and I can chime in as well, but what are you guys using for these virtual events that you're running, or for anything kind of like what we're doing today? Obviously, this typically would have been in person. We would see everybody in the room. Are y'all using Zoom? Is it GoToMeeting? What are some of the systems you have in place today that you've found that work well?
Yeah, 90% of the time, I think it's about selecting the thing that's best for your audience. And, there's a million of them out there. Zoom for us has been very stable. It's got great features. We're probably a creature of habit. We know it really well. We think our audience knows it. There's some organizations that are our largest investors that don't allow us to use it. So we have to talk a little differently to them. We've installed some new technologies like Basecamp because we don't have as many people on staff. So we have to be really good and really clear at communicating with one another. So at least for us, it's Zoom, Zoom, Zoom all day, and then trying to find a virtual wine tasting or chat breakouts or whatever it is, aspects of Zoom to make it more palatable.
Definitely. And, we've used them all as well at Microsoft because I'm always on these meetings. As you know, we've been on these meetings a lot. And, GoToMeeting is another good one for people that are looking out there. But also, more importantly, internally speaking, there's a conversation there as well, right? Internal communications. I know it actually got 0% on that first poll question, so maybe it's not as important. But I wanted to chime in here and talk about that because when everybody's working from home, it does become more important to have some technology to keep in communication. So what we use and what we found is really good for our team, this is Microsoft I'm talking about, is a system called Slack. And that's really good. So you can instant message, you can do video calls. It's almost like being in the same room. I know that you guys use some different platforms, but Microsoft has a similar platform, Microsoft Teams.
Certainly Teams.
Yeah.
365.
Exactly. So that's something I wanted to chime in there. I saw one of the questions come in. I figured I'd just throw it out there.
Perfect. And then I have a question for you, Joe.
Okay.
Does Microsoft align Chamber CRM needs with the needs of economic developments for tracking prospects, etc.?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the short answer is yes. The way that our system works, there's a centralized repository or database, right? That database can be segmented out, chamber members, investors, community, it can be non-members, economic development. So when we first started working specifically with the Alliance and with others, we have specific functionality in place for economic development. There's also obviously the website perspective that as a chamber, you have your niche for your website. Some chambers do have that slant to economic development. We also work with around 75 different pure economic development organizations. So there's the website design and site selector perspective. What can they get when they come to the website? Can they find the statistics? Can they find all that information? How do you organize it on the back end? So all of that, I guess I went around the point here, but all of that kind of feeds into your underlying data that you can then use with your business intelligence and your reporting and your day-to-day.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So I have a question I think you both can kind of answer about networking and technology. So here's a question. We've gotten really good with utilizing Zoom for events, but we're missing the networking portion our members have always loved. Any advice for virtual networking options?
So smaller is better. I think it's a little more incumbent on us to work harder to do more of these meetings, but I think when you can put a very unified group of people together around a common issue, problem, cause, that's really meaningful because they don't just want to get in the room to talk about anything. They really want to talk about things they're passionate about. So we've tried to segment our audience. I mentioned the Java with Janet. We've got several of those different things that we'll do to put no more than 8 or 10 people together. And when we do have a big event, and there's 100, 104 people, 102 people like we do today, for the most part, we try to do breakouts and then bring that information back into the general session so that we can talk about it and make people feel that they actually had input, which they need to.
Yeah. And I want to just to add to that, I've actually seen some interesting types of virtual events come out. You mentioned the Java, you mentioned wine tastings. I was invited to, and this was an association, so not a chamber specific, but I was actually invited to a virtual meeting, and it was at night after hours, and it was all about curated discussion, and basically you got an ingredient list to create some cocktails. And so you would be on this Zoom meeting, you would make a cocktail, and you would have a discussion. So it was just interesting. I want to throw that in the mix here because I'd never seen that before.
As if people aren't drinking enough at home during COVID. No,
it's an idea, right? It's an idea.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions. I know we need to wrap this up. So can we talk about foundation for one more moment, Chris?
Yeah.
We're actually considering eliminating our foundation. How do you plan to create income through a foundation?
We're still trying to get that answer, right? But I think for us, this is in its infancy, and we're using the foundation to supplement the work that we do through the Alliance, through our C6. In particular, it's around right now around talent pools, skilling and reskilling the workforce. And we're trying to align with new board members that have some contacts, but it's going to foundations, going to corporate foundations, individual donors, family wealth offices, but we believe there's extra pots of money out there we wouldn't normally get through the C6, as long as the work that we're doing is correlating to both sides of the chain.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. So that's one way that you say you can see the Alliance's revenue evolving past COVID-19.
I'll be honest. I think for us, we're budgeting, first year $250,000, which I'm not sure if we'll quite hit it. We're pretty close. We think we can grow that to, $1 million in year 2 or 3, and to 5 and maybe 3 to 4 years. So for us, that we believe that is a substantial portion of the future of our business.
That's awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. And I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question and then answer it. So how can people contact, you and Chris if they have more questions? So we're going to put up contact information for Joe and Chris. Please feel free to reach out to them with your questions. Thank you, everyone, for sending them in. And I know Joe's going to.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll go ahead and throw up our contact information, as Kayla just mentioned. You can also go to acrosoft.com, and we have tons of resources on there, blogs for chambers. And I can also, send around, if anybody emails me, I can get you my direct contact information. Always happy to have a conversation, even if you guys don't work with us today, and just discuss whatever you'd like to talk about from today.
Well, and to whatever questions you guys might have for me too, ongoing, I came here 5 years ago to redo the revenue model for the organization, and I'll be leaving at the end of this year. I'm part-time now. One thing COVID has taught my family is that I get to spend more time with my kids. And we own a real estate business, so we're kind of moving in that direction. But I have talked to a few of you about questions that you've got, in some cases even partnering with you on kind of growing and changing your revenue model over the months and years to come. And certainly glad to take those questions or help you more formally in any way I can.
Great. This is Beth Brunder again with ACCE. Terrific discussion, great questions. I think it was a really, really productive use of our time. Just want to thank both the attendees as well as our presenters today. I want to remind everyone that this was a recorded session. Joe, we'll give it to you to be able to post in the Acrosoft booth at the Expo Hall. We'll also post it in the sessions room, which you can access from our lobby. With that, I will start to wrap things up here and just make a couple of reminders for everybody to join us again tomorrow for our sessions. Visit the Expo Hall when you can. It will be open for 30 minutes beyond our programming time today. And most importantly, don't forget about the Zoom dance party starting at 4:15. You'll be able to access that from the lobby, and we're looking forward. I believe what we have on tap is 80s music, so 80s dance music. So thank you, everyone. We look forward to another productive day tomorrow, and thank you to my colleague Anissa and Chris, Joe, Kayla. Terrific session. Thank you again.
Thanks everybody. All right. So I guess